Hey everyone, today we are going to show you how to service this Victron 12-inch oscillating fan. Now you will need three things to accomplish this, and that would include oil for the fan's bearings. We like to use zoom spout oil here with a lot of our fans. The next thing you will need is grease for the oscillating gearbox and the gears within. I like to use Lucas Red and Tacky for this, but Valvoline general purpose grease is also an excellent alternative. And finally, you will need some cleaning solvents. I personally like to use this camp stove fuel, which is basically naphtha. Now, a word of caution about naphtha is that it is flammable, so do not smoke or use this product around sparks or around open flame. This warning is very clearly marked on the product container, so it should say it right there on the container itself. Now, you should use this in a well-ventilated area. I'm sitting out on my back patio, which is in the open air, so no worries there. Just don't use it in an enclosed space. Now, if you're nervous about using naphtha, Dawn dish soap is an excellent alternative, especially in warm, sudsy water. Just know that you will want to let the parts soak before scrubbing. Now, if you have any questions about anything you see here, please put that in the comments, and I will respond and provide clarification for you. My goal here is to give good general information, so if this helps you, please be sure to hit that like button below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And now let's get started on this. What we'll need to do first is remove the rear bullet cover screw. Now, when we went to remove the rear bullet cover, we found that we had some difficulty with this. We tried prying at the split point with a screwdriver, we tried tapping it, we tried prying on it. But what we discovered is that we need to remove the oscillator linkage and get it out of the way first. And the first thing you need to remove is the oscillator adjustment thumb screw, which is this knurled looking thing here under the oscillator wheel. So with that out of the way, the oscillator arm isn't quite out of the way yet because it won't clear. We need to remove this screw which secures the oscillator pivot into the fan's neck. So we'll remove that screw. Or rather just loosen it up a little bit. With that out of the way, we can lift up the fan head a little bit and move the oscillator arm off to the side. You want to make sure you put it over on the outside so that it's clear of everything. And after performing these steps, the bullet just comes off like magic. So we'll remove the gearbox cover screws. That's these three things here. And with that, the cover comes right off. And here is what the gears look like inside. You can see that they are covered in grease and just a bit grungy. We do need to change this out. So we'll start by taking the gears that we can take out of the gearbox. We'll take out the primary drive gear first, along with its top spacer. We'll start cleaning it off. And what we'll do is get ourselves a paper bowl here. It's what I tend to like to use. And we'll put our naphtha in it. And we'll put our gear and spacer in to soak. And then we will start cleaning out the gearbox. Now we're just going to get as much grease out as we can with a paper towel and a Q-tip. This kind of gets us started. We dip it in a little bit of naphtha as we do this. And this kind of allows us to get a good initial clean on the gearbox. And here it looks quite a bit better. but we're going to get it just a little bit better by doing what we should have done in the first place and use an acid brush. You can get these little things off of Amazon. They're relatively cheap and they work great for cleaning stuff like this. And you just dip it in naphtha and scrub along inside the gearbox with it, and you get the gears that you can't remove. And now you can see that the gearbox looks even better than it did. So what we will do is clean up the main primary drive gear now. And we'll go after that with our acid brush. We'll clean all the grease out of the gear teeth. This is a bit of a thorough process here. We're just speeding it up for the sake of time on our video here. Now here's our spacer piece that goes in on top of the primary gear. And we'll dry off our gear. And you can see that the gear looks quite a bit better. It's not as ideally clean as it could be, but it's a way better than it was. So we'll finish drying it off and set that all off to the side. We'll get our red and tacky Lucas grease here and start putting that into the gearbox. And what I usually do is get it around the lower driven gear first. This is the output gear that's in the gearbox under the worm gear drive assembly. We'll put a good amount of grease in here. I like to use liberal amounts of grease in my gearboxes. And we'll put our grease around the where the primary drive spur gear goes. We'll put grease around its gear teeth. And on its little secondary gear underneath. We'll stick that back into the oscillator gearbox and put grease on it. We have our spacer in there too on top of it. Be sure that this goes in. And we're just going to put more grease around the worm gear and around the gears so that as the fan operates, it has a decent feed of grease to supply the gears. And here's what it looks like with the new grease inside. Looks much better. So with that, we're going to put the top of the gearbox back on. But before we can do this, we got to give this thing a good clean. So we're going to get our naphtha back out here. And we're going to scrub off the inner part of the gearbox lid and just get the residue of old grease off of it. We wipe it off and get it all good and clean. And we'll go ahead and put it on our nice clean gearbox cover on our nice clean gearbox and fasten the screws back down. Now this is a process where you kind of want to take time and make sure you do it right. We like to tighten everything up pretty evenly here. And what we will do now is give the fan some oil. So we're going to grab our zoom spout oil and put you can see the zoom spout oil here. You can get this stuff off of Amazon. It's basically sewing machine lubricant, but guys in the HVAC industry use this to lubricate fan motors as well. And we're going to put it into this oil port right here. This is the rear motor oil port. And we'll put our oil spout in here above it. Now I'm kind of keeping hands out of the way here just for the sake of showing you on camera. You don't want to over oil your gears, you just want to maybe put about 4 or 5 drops of oil into the oil port. But you got to get the spout right above the hole. But really it is better to just put the oil spout into the hole. The big thing you do not want to do is over oil your fan. And what I am really showing you here is what not to do. If the oil is running out, that means you've got oil in the motor already, or it has taken too much. Now, ideally we like to stick the zoom spout down into the hole, and I'll try to show you that here. And yeah, I kind of failed again here. So here's a picture of how we did this. And you just have the zoom spout down into the hole. And we just fed a few drops in. Now we're going to oil the front oil port, and that is behind the blade, right above the blade hub and shaft. And really you just get your zoom spout down in there, kind of above the oil port. You got to be a little careful here that you don't get oil into the motor. And you kind of got to get your spout down in there. Again, I'm kind of showing you what not to do here. You can see the oil is sort of running over because, well, we already oiled this fan. But I wanted to get good shots of showing the oil port and the process. So that's what we are doing here. So we got the fan put back together and we put the oscillator gear cover back on, and we discovered a problem. And it was that the fan was picking up speed and slowing down. You can see the motor current picking up and dropping off here as well. Now initially we tried loosening up the rear bullet cover, but that didn't really seem to solve the problem any. The fan's bad behavior continued.
Okay,
So
it's still doing that, isn't it?
we took the rear bullet. We're going to take the rear bullet off here and see what's wrong. I think maybe the gearbox cover screws are a bit over tight. So we've taken off the rear gearbox cover, and I mean, things look good inside here. So what we are going to do is put the gearbox back together, but we're just going to leave the screws a little bit more loose. So we're going to tighten them, but basically instead of tightening them down, we're just going to put them to barely snug. What I think is happening is the gearbox cover is pressing against that spacer, and it's causing a mechanical bind in the fan's mechanism. So we're going to try leaving these gearbox screws just barely tight. This is a thing with stamped metal fans. They are kind of picky about this. You want to be sure you have your fasteners screwed down correctly. We'll put the fan back on low speed. Let it get started up. And it seems to be doing better. The power draw is going down below what it was initially. And the fan speed sounds a lot more steady. So this sure seems like a happier fan to me. And what we will do now is get the fan stopped and put the rear bullet cover back onto it now. So we'll put this into place and we'll get it all around the oscillator gear, the oscillator drive wheel good. We'll put our screw in. Tighten it down. And what we will do here is tip the fan forward and make sure we've got the oscillator wheel all cleared around here. Make sure that we don't have any rubbing going on. That could also cause a mechanical bind in the fan. And what we'll do is lift up the motor and put the oscillator linkage back onto the oscillator output wheel. And got to finagle it just a bit here. And we got it all back together, and we'll put the neck screw back in good. And what we'll do is just pick up the fan, be sure our oscillator's swivel screw is in correctly, and we'll put the oscillator adjustment thumb screw back on. And with that, the fan is back together, and we will adjust the fan head and bring it on in for a test run. So, all ready to go. And here it is, running here in the house. We're just going to use it for a few hours. The fan seems to be running smoothly and happily. So, it sounds good. Its energy draw is nice and stable. It's just the typical load fluctuations you'd expect to see from the oscillating movement and the tension and slack going onto the mechanism. And so with that, we're going to conclude this video. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, if you found this content to be useful, please be sure to hit that like button below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button as well, because we will have more to come. And so with that, we will see you later.